Good evening and welcome to this live Ask Me Anything About Property Investing with myself, Saj Hussain. I'm here every Monday evening at 8:30 p.m. really to help you get further faster in your property investing journey. Today is episode number 51. I'm here for about half an hour really sharing my knowledge and experience with you to help you with your property investing business, whether you're really at the early stage of just getting started or you're somebody that's very experienced and been doing this for some period of time. So if you just have a question for me, pop it into the comment section on whichever platform you're watching on. So we are streaming live on a few different platforms. We're on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. So wherever you're watching, wherever you've got a question, pop into the comment section. We'll do our very best to answer that question for you this evening. Now, do I know everything there is to know about property investing? No, absolutely not. I have a huge amount of knowledge and experience. As I said, I've been doing this for about 15 years and happy to share that knowledge and experience with you. So I'll do my very best to answer those questions that you have for me. As I said, whether you're early in your property journey or whether you've been doing this for some time. We're really at an interesting time. We're just getting into 2021. There's still lots of change happening. So there's still uncertainty in the marketplace. We certainly can't say for sure we know what's going to happen later this year. There is still a lot of uncertainty. So we still have to be cautious about what we're doing when it comes to property investing. So let's get our first question up on the screen and then we'll get that answered. And then, as I said, if you've got a question, make sure you pop it into the comment section and we'll get started in just a moment. And so our first question is on YouTube. Inoxi, I think if I pronounced that correctly. Hi, Saj, I'm thinking of using landlord rent guarantee insurance. All check on tenants came back okay, but it's still considering signing up. Is this something you use or is it waste of money? So it's a really good point for those that are unsure what this is. So this is insurance for your potential tenants when they move into the property. If there's an issue, sorry about that background noise, if there's an issue around them not being able to pay rent, for example, you've got like an insurance policy to cover you. So with insurance, it's like all insurance policies, you have to decide how useful or valuable that will be for you and how much of a peace of mind that you want. Now, obviously, if you get all this protection, that's great. That means, if there's ever an issue, you can rely on that insurance policy, but it comes as a cost. So you've got to weigh up what you're going to be paying for that policy versus the risks that it's protecting you against and whether that's worth doing. I'd say right now, probably more than at any other time, you probably want to have some measures in place to try and protect yourself if there's an issue with the tenancy. And one of the things that we do, for instance, is to look for good guarantors that can guarantee the tenancy. So if there's an issue with the tenant not being able to pay, for example, at least there's somebody else that we can turn to try and recover that money. And of course, you've got an insurance policy as well that will protect you even further. But as I said, it all comes at a cost, whereas a guarantor really won't cost you very much at all. It's just doing the initial checks and signing up and setting up the paperwork at the beginning of the tenancy. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers your question. We'll get our next question up on screen in a moment. So our next question is also on YouTube. It's from Ibrahim. Hi, Saj, what advice would you have for a 20-year-old looking to get started in property? Well, ultimately, it depends what it is that you're trying to achieve. You want to try and build a career within the property space. You want to build houses, get into construction. You want to learn a certain skill that you can use within property. It might be you want to do property sourcing. It may be that you want to purchase your own property. So depending on what it is that you ultimately want to achieve, one of the first things I would do is at least get yourself within the property space. So, if you're working right now, try and find a job or a career that means you're working within the property industry. That might be for a construction company, that might be for a developer, that might be for an estate agent. Whatever it is, at least you're within that environment where there's property activity and transaction happening on a daily basis. So if nothing else, what this does is this helps build your knowledge by way of osmosis. You kind of pick up these things by being immersed in that environment. And then it's thinking about what things do you have available to you? What resources do you have available to you to be able to build your property business? So how much time do you have? How much money do you have? What other skills is it that you can bring to the table that you have that you can utilize within the property business? How mortgageable are you? What funds is it that you already have? What funds do you have access to that you could tap into from somebody else? That might be another investor, it could be a family member, for instance. So it's thinking about all these things and considering things like location, where you are in the country, and of course the climate that we're in right now. And for instance, if you're looking to flip houses and you're, say, based in London, so a few factors you've got to think about. That's going to be quite high capital values to start with to do the purchase. So that's quite a lot of money involved to start with in the first place. Then, of course, there's some uncertainty in the market. If you're going to come to sell in 6 or 8 months' time, once your project finished and renovated, what's the market condition going to be at that moment in time? Is it still going to be a good market to sell in? So there's so many different factors and so many variables. Now, on my YouTube channel, I've got a couple of great videos which really go into the details of things that you need to look at if you're starting any brand new to your property investing journey. So if we're connected on any of the platforms, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, ping me a message on there and I'll send you a link to those videos. And also have a look at the YouTube channel, because there's a lot of videos and content on there. We're doing 3 videos a week now. We have this one on a Monday, and on Wednesday, generally, we have some kind of training and content video. And then on Friday, we have the vlog where we talk about the projects that I'm working on or I'm doing right now. The plan is to produce some more content as well. So if there's specific things that you'd like to see, let me know, and we'll see what we can do about producing those videos and getting those out onto the YouTube channel. So I said a lot of my time and effort that I allocate to do this and support others right now is being put into the YouTube videos that we're doing. Excuse me, the YouTube videos we're doing, because we're not running any events. The last event we ran is probably about a year ago. It was February 2020. So as we're not able to do those, I'm just using the time that I'd allocated for that to be able to produce content for you. So coming back to your question, Ibrahim, in case of what to do when you're starting, think about what is it you want to get to. What plan it is that need to put into place to achieve the goals that you want. So it might be buy to let if you've got some funds available to get started, slower growth, building property over time. It might be need cash flow right now, so it might be on the rent-to-rent strategies, for instance, rent to HMO or rent to service accommodation. Or maybe you just need to create an income at the beginning. It might be working for an estate agent. It could be working as a sourcing agent, which effectively is the flip side of an estate agent. You're still finding property, but this time you're getting paid by the buyer as opposed to the seller. So that gives you a few ideas. Ping me a message on whatever platform we're connected on. I'll send you some more videos that I think would help there as well. If anybody else wants those, again, just ping me a message. But they are my YouTube channel, so I'll send you the link to those. So let's see what's the next question that we have. The next question is from Jazz on YouTube. Hi, Saj, I'm based in the West Midlands, Wolverhampton. How is the COVID-19 affecting the rent-to-rent HMO market? What are your thoughts? What do you suggest? So, Jazz, depending on the context of your question, when you're talking about rent-to-rent, so you've got taking the rent-to-rent properties on, you've got operating them then at that point. So with regards to running rent-to-rent, no different running any of the HMOs that we have. So we have a HMO management agency where we have literally hundreds and hundreds of rooms across Birmingham that we manage, as well as some of my portfolio, some of other landlords' properties that we manage. What that means is that gives us a really good gauge of what's happening in the room rental marketplace, particularly when it comes to working professionals. Now, right now, the market is definitely a lot slower than it was, a year ago. We've had this kind of downward decline where COVID means there's less activity, less movement in the market. Yes, there's little pockets of activity. So, for instance, right now in a lockdown, there's not many people moving as much, and only those that need to move are moving at the moment. Of course, people shouldn't be out and about, just generally moving, particularly with the lockdown 3 that we're in right now. So what this means is that your voids might be longer, it takes longer to rent something in terms of property, which ultimately means it affects your profits if you've got rooms that are sitting empty. And if people aren't moving, then there's not a great deal that you can actually do in that situation. It's really important that if you are in that position, that you be really proactive with your marketing, reaching out to those people that do need to move. The other thing to think about also is during a pandemic situation like this, some people might not want to be in a house where they're sharing with other people. Some people might think, well, actually, maybe it's time I've just got my own place, a studio flat or an apartment, rather than being in a shared house in a HMO. So that's something else to consider as well. It can impact your demand for rooms in that way. Now, then, if you're thinking about growing your business by taking properties on, then of course I think this is a good time to be speaking to landlords. There'll be many landlords that are reviewing where they are and what their plans are for the coming years. Do they still want to be in this business? Some of them are getting absolute battering and hammered by taxation and thinking maybe now is the time to get out. Some people don't like the uncertainty of the tenant market and what's going on and really would prefer just a fixed guaranteed rent. So now, if you're looking for rent-to-rent, I'll say it's a good time to look, but also be mindful that it may be taking you longer to rent the rooms out, because remember, you've got to pay the landlord, you've got to be collecting rent as well on the other side. So there's no point taking all these properties on from the landlord if you can't actually rent them out and make sure those rooms are full. So think creatively as well when it comes to renting rooms. So Jazz, I hope that helps, and we'll get our next question up on screen. That's from Kevin, also on YouTube. Saj, do you prefer HMO or single buy-to-let as long-term hold? Well, for me, I'm definitely a big fan of HMOs. That's been our core bread and butter for probably 10 years plus now. And the reason for that is, and the reason I got into HMOs in the first place, was because we wanted to produce a much higher income for the effort that we're putting into each particular property. And when I started, primarily the investments all came from other people's money. So it's about using somebody else's money, getting a property, that whether it's a lease option, whether it's a rent to rent, or whether we're doing a purchase, and maximizing the income that we possibly can from that property so that we can pay the investor a great return on their money and also make a profit as well. Then the business just grew from that. It grew, and our portfolio has grown as well over that particular time frame, over the last 10 years or so. And so I'm still a big fan of HMOs, because really, when you think about investing in property, if you think about, there's two ways you're going to make money. One is the rental income or the rental profit that you generate each month after paying the mortgage costs and other costs you might have. Then the other way is the slow growth of property over time, i.e. the values increase over time. I say slow growth because occasionally you might get a boom scenario where the prices jump quite quickly. Over the last few years, prices have been growing quite a bit. But then sometimes there's periods where the prices are just more stagnant and grow much more slowly. But really, I mean, the reason we're in this business is because we see and we have confidence that over the long term, that properties are going to go up in value, and not just a little bit, but quite significantly. People talk about prices double every 7, 10, 12 years. Hey, look, none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know if that's definitely going to happen. But generally, we've got confidence that prices are going to rise. So there's two ways we're making money, the rental profit and the capital growth. When we put them together, that's dynamite. That's amazing. There's very few investments that can deliver those kind of returns. And that's why property is so exciting and why so many people want to do it, because it's long-term wealth creation as opposed to short-term quick bursts. Now, when you're holding the property and you're taking a rental profit each month, you're on your traditional buy-to-let, what you're doing, you're taking a modest income there with a view that you're going to get capital growth. What with a HMO we aim to do is be able to take a property on, we force the value up by forced appreciation by doing a major spend on that property and converting it to a much nicer house, working as a shared house. So it's worth significantly more than we started with. So now we've got a higher value. We remortgage that property to extract most of that investment back out that we've made. And then what we're left with is a nice cash flow. So now we're making much more money than we would have if it was a single let property. Yes, we've done a lot more work. It was a lot more effort. The running and operating of a HMO is a lot more work than it's going to be if it's a single let. But hey, this is a business. It means we're happy to put the effort in as long as it's making money for us. And that's why HMOs, for me, tends to be the most preferred strategy when it comes to cash flow, because they produce, I believe, the best income for what you can offer the market. And of course, markets change slightly. For example, if you're doing student HMOs right now, and the students earlier in the year or last year, even many of them had left and gone back home, and then many student landlords were impacted by that as well. But none of us have predicted a pandemic. Nobody in their wildest dreams could have thought something like this could have happened, but it has, and we have to deal with it. So remember, every strategy, there's a ups and downs, so it doesn't mean Sony has an upside, there's no downside. It's about taking a balanced and measured risk, and ultimately it's about reducing your risk so that you can make a great profit in this business for the short term and the long term as well. So HMOs, hands down for me. I hope that answers your question there. So our next question is from Jacob on LinkedIn. Hi, Saj, I'm interested in joining your mentee program. Is there a way I can speak to some of your current mentees to see how they gain value from this program? Yes, absolutely, Jacob. What I'd suggest is jump onto my website, sajhussain.com, and there'll be a tab there for learning from me, which is the mentoring section. And if you complete that form there, I want to learn a little bit more about you, see if we're going to be a good fit for you as well, because it's not just a case of you picking me, it's a case of just making sure we're going to work together and I can add value to what you're doing. Because for me, mentoring is really about making sure that you can achieve the goals that you are setting, the objectives, the outcomes that you want, and I want to support you to be able to get those. And if I feel it's something I can't add value to, or I'm not sure how we're going to be able to achieve this, then hey, look, I'm going to put my hands up and say, I may not be the right person for you. So if you fill in the form, it gives me a little bit of background. Somebody in the office will call you, have a chat with you, and then if you want to have a chat with me as well, we can then speak, take it from there. And then if you want to speak to some of the other mentees, absolutely, you can do that. We'll connect you with those, you have a chat with those, see if it's a good fit for you, reach out, and then we can take it from there. So thank you, and I hope that answers your question there. Our next question is from Nation on YouTube. when will property be regulated? It's full of get rich quick mercenaries. Yes, property, there's a lot of money that you can make from property. So unfortunately, also attracts a lot of sharks as well. There's a little bit of regulation, but not a huge amount. And there'll be more that'll come into the marketplace. I think sometimes, the way the market operates means it gets rid of some people within the marketplace that don't run, a nice tight ship and don't run and operate their business properly. But it doesn't get rid of everybody. There's lots of sharks. So, for instance, you have licensing programs, landlord licensing programs, HMO licensing programs. But often what they do, they raise money for the local authority, and they raise money from those that are good landlords, those that subscribe to these things, rather than the ones that should be chasing, who avoid these schemes in the first place. And then you've got some regulation happening within the estate agency. You've got some within lettings. So, there's various different sectors within the property industry. On the property development side, there's very little there. You've just got planning and building regulation and things to think about. There's a little bit in the construction space. So, there's various different parts of property. It's not a case of regulating the whole thing. There's individual bits that need to look at, and I agree there's too many people that sell this get-rich-quick dream, and the reality is, you can make money. You can make money from property starting with nothing. I'm an example of that. When I started in this business 15 years ago, I literally didn't have no money to start with. But it was very, very hard. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying you have to understand it's hard work. So these people that say, push the magic button and you'll be rich tomorrow, it's complete nonsense. It doesn't really happen in property. It requires graft and hard work. But the results you can achieve in property are absolutely phenomenal. And I believe, as I said earlier on, there's very few things that you can do that will deliver you the kind of generational wealth that property does over and above anything else. So let's get our next question up on the screen. Angujan, my sincere apologies, I'm absolutely terrible on pronunciations. It's on LinkedIn. How do you currently see the rent-to-service accommodation market in London and generally in the UK? So rent-to-service accommodation, there's no doubt about service accommodation has taken a battering over the last few months. And the reason for that is because if people are not able to move around freely, they're not traveling around, there's concerns, there's health, there's government stipulations, lockdowns and stuff from different tier levels. So people are not moving around as they were before. And if they're not moving around, they're not staying in hotels, they're not staying in service accommodation properties, and that massively impacts the revenue that you're going to be able to generate. So we run quite a few service accommodation properties as well, and something we certainly felt the pinch of earlier in the year. But we pivoted relatively quickly. When I say we pivoted, what we did, we already had a good portion of business that used to come from certain corporates. And so what we've done, we've doubled down on that and relying on that business, as opposed to having a business coming from Booking.com and Airbnb, because when the platform shut down as well, that dries up the lead source for most people. That means they can't get the bookings in. And of course, if you haven't got the cash flow, you're struggling to make the business work. And I know, unfortunately, many people have handed properties back. We've actually taken properties on from some rent-to-service accommodation providers who have struggled, where we've had the volume of business, so we've taken those on. And you've got to look at certain of the sectors as well. So one of the other things we did is people within the NHS, people who need to isolate. So all of these are little niche sectors that you can look at. Often people tend to take a lazy approach and just put something on Airbnb and Booking.com and just assume that that's where all the business is going to come and rely on that. And I think this is a perfect example of we shouldn't put all our eggs in one basket, and then we should have multiple methods to be able to generate our leads and our business. It's going to come back. It's not something that will suffer for the long term. It's in the short term. People are struggling within the service accommodation space to be able to get those bookings. But as the vaccine starts to roll out and as the sort of lockdown starts getting lifted and the country starts to get back to some kind of normality, service accommodation will reappear as a business, and it will work quite well. I think one of the challenges also within London is you have the 90-day rule, which some people just seem to ignore completely, that it doesn't even exist and just carry on. So you need to be mindful you're doing things in a compliant way so you build a long-term business. And generally within the UK overall, what I said earlier pretty much applies. Everyone's in the same boat right now there, which means there's very little movement going on. So you've got to think about how can you sustain these properties. One other option is to do longer contracts, which we've done on some of ours, where we've given the whole property to a particular company for their staff, because they've got fewer people in there, because of social distancing, etc. They don't want to kind of cram it in with lots of staff members in the same building. So there are just a few thoughts. Hope that helps you with that. So let's get our next question in. Our next question's on LinkedIn from Ira. I'm buying a corner property and would like to buy some land off a local council. Is this process usually complicated or straightforward? So the first thing to do is to contact the council directly. So you have an estate management team or the kind of different people within the council, but effectively the people that deal with the management of all their property and property that they own. And you'd ask them, first of all, this is something you're interested in, then they'll go through a process. And it can be quite long-winded because sometimes they'll put it out to the public. They won't necessarily deal with you exclusively. They might need to put it into an auction, for instance, or it might just be open to public treaty sale, either just put it up or whatever is the best price that they get, because they don't want to be seen to doing anything underhand. So that's the reason they will do it in that way. You've got their legal team as well that will look at it. So it is a bit of a slow process. It's not something I've actually done myself, just to be completely transparent, but I know other people have. But there's no harm in asking, getting the ball rolling, especially if you're not in a hurry and you're okay to get that at some point, then I think it's worth doing that. So I hope that helps you with that, Aaron. So let's get our next question up, which is from Martin on YouTube. Can I use a refurbishment bridging loan as a first-time investor? So a refurbishment bridging loan. So Martin, I haven't quite got full context of what you're trying to do here. Let's assume you're trying to purchase a property and it's you're a first-time buyer. That's the first property that you're purchasing. So if you've got a bridging loan to purchase that property, you have to determine whether it's going to be your home or whether it's going to be an investment property that you're going to have either tenants in there or you're going to renovate it and sell it. So you need to work out what the exit is first of all before you start, so you find the right product to help you finance it. If it's going to be your home, that this is what's considered regulated by the FCA, it's a regulated activity, lending money to you to buy your home. I'm not 100% sure here, but I suspect the market's probably a bit more restricted and a bit more limited for you there, but it would be possible. The bridges are interested in lending you money to be able to bridge a gap, hence the term bridging. And what they want to know is once they've bridged the gap, how are you going to come off the bridge and repay them? That's the key thing they're interested in. So if you're going to sell the property, it's about how much value you're adding. Why is your property going to be desirable to sell? Is it going to sell in a reasonable time frame? Are you going to do a renovation on it and flip it on effectively? If you're going to have tenants in there, are you going to be able to access a mortgage product as a buy-to-let mortgage product, considering you're a first-time buyer? Are those products even going to be available to you? So you need to speak to a mortgage broker beforehand, just to be certain that once your bridge comes to an end or you come off the bridge, that there's a product there for you to move on to. And then if you're thinking of using it as your home, again, what you've got to think about is when you come off the bridge, you're going to need to get a residential mortgage. What mortgage product is going to be available to you based on your income, your age, and these factors that they'll look at for residential mortgage. Because remember, the requirements for a residential mortgage, i.e. your home, will be different from that to a buy-to-let. So you've got three potential exits here. Your home, it's going to be a tenanted property, or you're going to sell it on. So you've got to think about those exits first before you approach any kind of bridging finance, because what they're doing, they're bridging the gap so you can come off the other end. So you need clarity about how you intend to come off the other end. And it's a good mortgage broker that you need to give you some guidance on that before you commit to a bridge, because let's face it, bridges are fairly ruthless, because if they don't get paid, you're going to lose a shirt off your back, and you wouldn't want that to happen. So be careful before you enter into that arrangement there. So hope that gives you a little bit of help with that. Our next question, Keenan, saying, evening Saj, evening Keenan, haven't seen you here for a long time. We're busy fixing all these boilers for everybody, making lots of money. So what signs do you see in the property market what signs did you see in the property market prior to 2008 housing crash? So at that time, it was a very different market. So even if we do have a crash now, all the things that lead up to this crash will be different to the one that happened in 2008. Primarily the reason being because the 2008 crash was around liquidity, i.e. money and the availability of money. There's a lot of dodgy stuff going on in the mortgage market, which really caused banking to implode and had a massive knock-on effect in terms of being able to borrow money to be able to buy property. And if most properties purchased using borrowed money, whether it's a bank, bridging, wherever it's from, and if that money isn't available, i.e. less liquidity is in the marketplace, That means even if you've got an appetite to buy, you want to buy, the money isn't there to be able to help you to buy, which means very few transactions get done, which forces house prices down. That's essentially the kind of stuff that was going on in 2008. But if we have a market crash this time, there's no shortage of money. There's plenty of money available right now. In fact, it's never been this cheap. The interest rates are so low in history. When you look at historically all the rates, it's the lowest it's ever been. And so money is relatively easily available and it's quite cheap. So the factors are very, very different. But some of the things that are similar is that there's a shortage of stock. There's a massive appetite and a demand to be able to buy property. People are rushing to be able to buy, thinking that it's going to run out of, it's going to be out of fashion or something. So those are the similarities that you can see that's happening now. That was happening kind of pre-2008 as well. So I think it's important to be a little bit cautious. At this time, we just wait rather than just rushing in and jumping on the bandwagon everybody else is doing. Make sure you're looking at very good deals, not just okay deals and not just good deals, but very good deals, because if the market turns, which I suspect it will over the coming months, you're still in a very good and comfortable position. And believe me, if the market does turn, there'll be kind of panic, because some of the triggers that will lead to that will be unemployment, for instance. A furlough scheme is running till the end of April, and as people start coming off the furlough scheme, many people, unfortunately, will become unemployed, made redundant at that point. And as that starts having a knock-on effect on the economy, there'll be less money. The kind of sentiment will be that people are not really, they become more frugal. They're not really spending money. If they're not spending, the last thing they're thinking about is maybe buying property. So that means things are taking longer to sell. Prices start to fall. There's fewer buyers. There's more stock. So this is the environment that will end up getting created in that situation. And of course, if you're buying property, that means you've just got way more deals to be able to pick and choose from. So when I was sourcing property around that time, to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that sort of time, and the reason I was sourcing then and I'm not sourcing now for others is because there's just so many good deals available. It was easy to pick out really, really good deals and offer them to other people. Whereas now there's very little. And I was speaking to somebody earlier today about sourcing. I said, look, we don't source for other people right now because there's very few good deals around. And if they are, we're quite happy to buy those. We work with the investors. We've got the funds to be able to purchase them. So we don't need to offer them to other people. It's only when you have an abundant amount of deals, way more than you can actually acquire yourself, that's when you'd start offering them to other people. So that gives you a little bit of context. In fact, I'll probably do a video very soon about what I see happening in the market, where I see things will go. And I don't have a crystal ball, but based on the things we can see where I think things are going, I'm going to share that on YouTube. So make sure, if you don't already subscribe to the channel, the vast majority of my viewers on YouTube are not subscribers, which is amazing when I look at that and I say, I really appreciate every single person that views and subscribes to the channel. But so many that view don't subscribe. So if you're one of those, hey, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. It also helps share the videos to other people. YouTube will show them to more people, which is what I'd like to do, be able to get this message out to more people. I'm working very hard on building that content for you, and it would help me if you subscribe, especially if you're a regular watcher to the of the channel. So let's get our next question up on the screen. This is from Peter on Facebook. Hi, Saj, if property needs underpinning, when work is done properly, can you easily get a mortgage on it? So if this is done properly, and it should be done properly, if you need to do underpinning, and for those that may not know what that is, it's essentially, I guess if I describe it as if that's what your house was and it started to sink slightly this way, what you do, you effectively support this here to stop it moving any further. It can be many different reasons why that happens. It might be the soil is softened over time and the weight of it starts causing it to sink. Sometimes it's drain problems. There are many reasons why a property is starting to move and it needs that support underneath it to stop it moving. Now, underpinning is not cheap. It can be quite costly to do, so you've got to weigh up the options to make sure it's worthwhile. And if it's done properly by in the correct method, you should have paperwork and insurance against that. So what that means is it should still be mortgageable, but you need to check with a good broker to be able to ensure that is something that's going to be mortgageable. What you don't want to do is purchase something for cash on the assumption you're going to be able to remortgage it, do the work, and then find there's still an issue and something you can't mortgage at the other end. So check beforehand, speak to your broker for them to maybe speak to surveyors or the lenders that you're looking to work with, so that they can give you some guidance on the work that you do is going to leave you with a property that is mortgageable and even sellable. By sellable, I mean, even if you don't need to take on a mortgage, you're thinking, hey, that's okay, I'm just going to sell it. But the person purchasing it from you most probably will be looking to take on a mortgage. So it should still be mortgageable so that they can purchase it from you. So I hope that helps. Let's get our next question on the screen. This is from Joanne. Hi, Joanne. I've seen you for a while. This is on LinkedIn. And hi, if I take a purchase lease option on a buy-to-let house and convert it into 4-bedroom HMO, does the owner need to tell the mortgage company? Or is it, or as it's a unlicensed mini-mo, it's not interesting to the mortgage company? Thank you. So Joanne, what I would say is really important to check what your mortgage terms and conditions are. Often when people take on a mortgage, they kind of sign, they kind of flick across to page 28, don't really read the terms, sign, got the mortgage, job done. But what I would say is just check those mortgage conditions. If you're not sure, you could always ring the lender up. By ring the lender, what I mean is you'll be with the owner of the property. They could ring up the lender and say, I'm with a friend, I've got some question about a mortgage, pass it to you. You can then ask questions with the lender and say, hey, look, if we were going to have 4 people in this property and sharing the house, whether it's on a single tenancy or 4 individual tenancies, is that something that's going to be okay and permitted under this particular mortgage product? Now, some lenders will say, no, that's not something we will give you consent to do. Others might say, yes, that's fine, that, you know, we don't object to that. Others might say, well, you can have 4 people on one tenancy agreement as joint tenants, but you can't have them as 4 individual tenancies. This is why it's important to look at the mortgage terms and conditions, because they'll vary. Now, look, John, I know many people will just completely ignore the terms and conditions and just go and do it anyway. I don't recommend that. I don't think that's the best way to do it, because this is when people end up building businesses on a rocky platform. It means it's not stable. At any time, the mortgage lender could pull in that particular mortgage, call it in and say, hey, look, you're a breach of our mortgage terms. We're not very happy. We're going to put in a mortgage. And people think it doesn't happen. It does happen. It's rare, but it does happen. And you don't want to have a property this way where you spend a lot of money on and you're controlling it. And then you find there's a problem with the lender. So I'd encourage you to do this properly. There's also lots and lots of property around that's unmortgaged. We just assume all the property we look at is mortgaged. It isn't. You'd be amazed at how many properties are unmortgaged, they're unencumbered, they have no borrowing against them, and then you don't have mortgage terms and conditions to worry about there as well. They could switch to a different type of mortgage, but really you're not in a position to give them financial advice to be able to tell them about switching mortgage products. So what you need to do is sit them down with a mortgage broker. The mortgage broker could look at it, maybe switch them across to a different mortgage before you take it on a purchase lease option. That way you've got it set up correctly for the right type of use that you want it for and the right type of mortgage on the back end of that as well. So I hope that helps. I think that was our last question. It just leaves me to say thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time on a Monday. Remember, I'm here every Monday at 8:30 p.m. answering your property investing questions. You can connect with me on the various different platforms behind. If we can help you, if you're looking for support in terms of mentoring, just go to the website, sajhussain.com. If you're interested in investing with me, if you've got funds, again, visit the website. There's some more information there. We can arrange to have a chat and see what I can do to help you. Thank you once again. I look forward to seeing you here next Monday at 8:30 p.m.